On behalf of Wilson, Jones, Lee, White, Roy, Cervantes, Sheets, MacDonald, Santana, and myself, L. Parsons, welcome to our presentation on social activities and how they pertain to persons with dementia and their caregivers. Our central focus was to discern whether social activities can buffer the significant distress or burden caregivers experience as a result of caring for their loved ones. For the purposes of this study, our data was drawn from Voices in Motion, an intergenerational, socio-cognitive, choir-based intervention designed to support persons with dementia and their caregivers. Recent research has supplied evidence that elucidates the extent to which being a caregiver to a person with dementia might have deleterious effects. These effects span physical, psychological, and cognitive domains. More specifically, research has detailed the stress buffering properties of perceived social support, which is indeed found to moderate the negative relationship between perceived stress and quality of life. Moreover, different findings have suggested that the exchange of social support between caregivers engenders a reciprocal flow of support that fosters self-disclosure and solidarity. To this end, Geller et al. Investigated the stress buffering properties of perceived social support and found that it did in fact buffer the negative relationship between perceived stress and quality of life. Furthermore, Smith and colleagues proposed that exchange of emotional support between caregivers was capable of inciting something of a two-way flow of support, in turn promoting self-disclosure and solidarity between caregivers. Ultimately, this project aimed to investigate the moderating effects of social activities on caregiver distress within dyads. We analyzed interindividual change in caregiver distress as a function of care recipient cognition and quantified the moderating effect of social activities on caregiver distress. Firstly, we hypothesized that caregiver distress would improve as engagement in social activities increased, and secondly, we expected to see that social activities would have a moderating effect on caregiver distress in spite of declines in care recipient cognition. 32 dyads, each consisting of a person with dementia and their caregiver, participated in the Voices in Motion choir. MMSE scores for persons with dementia indicated mild to moderate dementia as classified by an MMSE score of 25 to 20 and 19 to 15 respectively. Our research question focused primarily on caregivers whose mean age was 67.1 years. Assessments followed a measurement burst design, taking place roughly every 4 weeks over each choral season. At each of these time points, caregivers completed a variety of assessments which surveyed psychosocial health, for instance, the Zaret Burden interview and social activity components from the REACH2 protocol, and care recipients completed a series of tasks that measured cognitive functioning, such as MMSE. For our statistical analysis, we used multi-level modeling to measure change in caregiver distress at the between and within person levels. As well, we tested the moderating effect of care recipient cognition on the relationship between social activities and caregiver distress. Changes relative to each individual's baseline on social activities predicted lower distress scores overall, and this relationship was statistically significant. Our omnibus test for the moderating effect of care recipient cognition on caregiver distress was not significant. However, because we had a priori interest in this effect, we decided to probe it regardless. We looked at this moderating effect at 3 different clinical cutoffs for care recipient MMSE scores, with a score of 24 being the cutoff for mild impairment, 19 being the cutoff for moderate impairment, and 14 being the cutoff for severe impairment. For each individual cutoff, higher levels of social activities predicted lower distress levels. This relationship was more pronounced in caregivers whose care recipient was in the earlier stages of dementia.
So, overall, our analysis suggests that as caregivers become more involved in social activities, their distress level decreases. Though our data includes input from care recipient measures, the primary focus of this particular study was caregivers. While our omnibus results were not significant, the follow-up a priori results are meaningful in regards to our research questions. Instead, our results help us know where to focus our intervention efforts. According to our data, the caregivers who were taking care of individuals who were still scoring comparatively high on the cognitive assessment measures were the caregivers who seemed to benefit the most from social activities. Therefore, we can conclude that an intervention program such as Voices in Motion may be most impactful as an early intervention strategy. Limitations of this study include a small sample size and short choral seasons, both hindering our ability to accurately measure the effects we were interested in. The small sample size led to potential decreases in power and statistical significance, and the same could be said for short choral seasons, specifically because it may not be the case that there are noticeable declines in care recipient cognition or noticeable decreases in caregiver distress over such a short period. However, the sample size may be small but consisted of some participants who have participated in more than one choral season, which helps contribute longitudinal data to the study, and the short choral seasons allowed for the unintentional ABA format of the study to demonstrate that positive effects can be lost during times when participants are not in treatment. In terms of additional future research, it would be interesting to know whether more involvement in social activities has impacts in other areas, such as increases in confidence that caregivers may have in terms of their caregiving abilities, to see if as distress decreases, neuroticism levels also decrease, and whether there are impacts on areas of physical health, such as cortisol levels, gait, or quality of sleep. These are important to consider as distress levels can be impactful in a variety of psychosocial and biological domains, so getting a full picture of the impacts will be beneficial for those developing intervention programming. As we are looking at this issue out of an interest in preserving the positive relationship between caregivers and care recipients, we think that it is beneficial to look into whether there is a difference between different types of relationships, such as a spouse caring for a spouse or a child caring for a parent. The different dyadic relationship dynamics at play within these kinds of pairings may yield different results, as well as different areas where there are strengths or which may need support. It may also be beneficial to see how these interventions impact other family members who are not the immediate caregiver or care recipient. And finally, other researchers have looked into other musically based and therapeutic interventions, which is something we could investigate as well, such as merging the Voices in Motion intervention with other treatments. Overall, our results indicate that through having an open and supportive social network through the intervention program, caregivers can have the help and understanding that they need to assist them through the stressful changes together with their care recipient in a more positive and fulfilling way. On behalf of my group, I, Jocelyn Wilson, would like to thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation.